Welcome to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And on the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, that was a preseason game, I guess. What do you even say about a game that was probably one of the more boring preseason games in the history of preseason games?
Well, it happened, and certainly we have evidence of that happening. There are contemporary accounts of the game occurring. We have records of points scored, statistics generated. Archaeologists will look back on this and conclude that the game happened. And
that's really about the nicest thing we can say about it. Fantastic. All right, let's go to the mailbag. And the first question is... So we'll be covering the loss to the Pats in the preseason. Again, preseason records don't necessarily matter. Hell, the Vikings even have a win this preseason, so we can dump the whole Kevin O'Connell doesn't win in the preseason thing for the year. But it was a game. We will cover it to the best of our abilities and talk a little bit about what to expect against the Titans moving forward. But before we do any of that, just want to thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like access to things like bonus material, the Discord, all of that, check out patreon.com/NorseCode. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well if you'd like to do like a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com for any number of wonderful pieces of Norse Code merchandise. I dropped the ball this week. This was a really busy week for me. I admittedly have not spoken to any of our friends in the graphic design world, specifically Mr. Dropplay Dave, about a Hell League shirt, but I need to get on the ball on that. We're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, it's on you. It has nothing to do with me because I forgot about that as soon as we stopped recording last week.
Well, you famously don't remember what you say on podcasts, which if I was on as many podcasts as you are, I would be in the same boat.
I think it's efficient. I clear the brain space for what I've said on podcasts so that I could better memorize things like BFACs and partial scripts from video essays from 9 years ago. Much more important information to have.
Yeah, actually that tracks. Or just your brain just absorbed too much E-Bombs World, and as a result, it just knows what it can bring in and what it can't. And that's really about it. Well,
wait, it's full circle, isn't it? Sorry, I gotta talk about E-Bombs World for just a second. It's a full circle, right? The most popular content back in that day was just stolen and rebranded, and now in the world of AI generation,
that's all it is. That's
all it is.
That's all.
It's just a little bit better. That's all.
It's all anything is really. It's tragic, and it's going to bother me. Before we begin, I wanted to bring this up. We're not going to do a shtick on this. We're not going to go super in depth on the topic itself. It's not even listed in our show notes. The Vikings male cheerleader thing, just as a brief aside here before we begin. A lot has been printed, and regardless of your politics on the situation, it's not the first time the Vikings have had a male cheerleader, but it's the whole thing is blown out of proportion and a little bit ridiculous. But if you are a Vikings fan and you would like to have some way of, say, shutting up a person who has a negative opinion of the team based on this one thing, despite
James has a story for you.
I have a brief story. So I run a citywide festival. And I did that all last week. You'll notice my voice is like an octave or two lower than normal. I am exhausted. I am not fully recovered.
He had to sing for the festival. It was crazy.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes. It's that, and it's that in the day job. So when I was the one we were talking about, but so I'm at the festival on Saturday night, and I'm wearing a Vikings hat, and it's keeping my head from being sunburned. Thankfully, it's doing its job, and a fellow notices it. We sit and we talk for a moment, and he asks what I thought, and not even like what I think about the Vikings in general.
He just starts with,
what do you think about the Vikings having a male cheerleader? And I just sat there and just went, oh, come on, dude. I'm exhausted. B, I'm sweating. I have no desire to be a part of this conversation. And so a way to shut this conversation down is to say the following. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm not usually there to watch the cheerleaders. But that said...
You do you, but I'm not...
But that said, this isn't the first time the Vikings have had a male cheerleader in their history, and also you probably voted for one in 2000 and 2004 without knowing. And immediately, got out his phone and started Googling, and immediately changed the subject on how he hasn't watched the NFL in years anyway. And I was like, why do you have an opinion on the situation then at all? I don't care. So anyway, I just thought it was funny because a lot of ink has been spilled on this particular topic, and it's not an actual. If you're gonna get upset at this, come on.
as obviously everyone kind of knows my political inclinations, but I don't think that this the thing I'm about to describe is unique to a particular side or anything like that. I would say one side does it way more often than the other, but it's not unique to a particular side. But I think it's just. Very often there's kind of like a reason to kind of distract people or create division. It sounds like such basic political analysis. Be like, they're just trying to divide you, but in some senses, yes, right? Where you animate people's emotions so that they don't really participate in politics at a rational level. That's, marketing 101 in politics. And so sometimes you just find a thing that you think will work. And, they do it 20 times and 2 of those times it sticks, or so 3 of those times it sticks. And this is just kind of sort of one of them where they just decided that this thing would stick. And at first, the first time I had noticed it, I got a notification from one of my burner accounts that follows political stuff, and it was somebody mad about this, and they originally thought that Blaze was a trans woman, and they were mad about that. Which if you're mad about that, F you. But no, Blaze is not a trans woman. Blaze is just a dude. And they got confused by the fact that he had feathery locks or something. And so they got mad about that. And then they had to pivot in the replies when people were like, well, no, he's him. He's a him. I just did a Dwayne Wade right there. And you could tell that the Vikings are not treating it all one, because they have different uniforms, right? They have slightly different uniforms for the male and female cheerleaders. And so they had to pivot, and then they were like, well, he has to he's not doing the male cheerleader roles, lifting people up and throwing them or whatever. And it's well, you haven't actually seen them perform. You're just intuiting that. But in a sense, yeah, because no professional cheerleaders or I should say cheerleaders for professional teams do that. They don't do flyers and stunts like that, because it turns out once you introduce the concept of workman's comp, cheerleading is just too dangerous to do the way they do in high school and college. So yeah, now they're just mad that they're dancing, which is wild. A hard return to gender roles. Anyway, there's a really good piece by Parker Malloy, who've been following for a while, over at readtpa.com. You can just head directly there, or I'm just going to leave it in the show notes, that kind of talks about this in more concrete terms. It talks about Kevin Sorbo being mad about this. Kevin Sorbo, legitimately actually a Vikings fan, along with Peter Hegseth, actually Vikings fans, who, in my understanding, haven't watched in a while, but fine, and are saying that they're not going to watch the Vikings now because of a decision about the cheerleading, which, I don't know, Ted Glover made a good point that maybe you're not really a Vikings fan if this is what you care about. So I'm not usually you're not a real Vikings fan if you threaten to leave the team if they suck. But now I know there's a line somewhere in there in the true Scotsman argument, and that's the line for me.
As it turns out, this is where it's at. So anyway, yeah. I wanted to share that. I'm the closest thing this show has to a Republican. That is a quote from Arif himself. So I'm not blasting anyone on any particular aisle. I do enjoy dumb hypocrisy, and this is just clearly just something that does not truly matter. But I wanted to mention it. I mentioned it in passing to Arif. Just, oh, hey, this was a funny thing. Is this actually show worthy? Because
well, first of all, we don't have a ton of content. We assume we'll see as the show goes on.
Arif is writing some checks his mouth can't cash here. So
yeah, right. But like, I mean, it's just funny. Like, what in the world are we doing, man? It's just they're dancing, man. Who cares?
Yeah, I can't wait to see the outfits for Halloween, I guess, because they do the Halloween thing often. So, have fun with that.
Oh, that's going to go wild. We're just going to revive we're going to get the whole crew involved. We're going to get JD Vance talking about it, Charlie Kirk.
Look,
it's going to be crazy.
If you're upset about this, you probably haven't watched in years anyway, according to, your stance. So whatever. So let's get into the actual discussion of the game itself, shall we?
I guess it's about as interesting as the conversation we just had. Yeah, so we might as well.
Jesus. So the Vikings have some holes in their back as far as like their depth is concerned, and this was the majority of the starters were not playing. Obviously, it's the second preseason game. You could argue that they were holding back a considerable number of plays or ideas that they could have been using. Overall, you walk away from this game thinking that A, we don't have a backup quarterback, and B, we could be in for some trouble if some injuries begin to happen.
Yeah, and it's important to kind of understand that the first couple of drives for the Vikings backups who were in there were against starters. So, that like should kind of mediate our responses a little bit, but not like extraordinarily much. I think that it's fair to be concerned about a lot of these, a lot of the performances, right? I would have liked Donovan Jackson to play for what it's worth. I don't think that he got any snaps at all. It was Joe Huber at left guard, Blake Brandel at right guard to start. And then, obviously down the line, we saw like people I don't know anything about, like Michael Gonzalez, people I was like broadly curious about. But yeah, we didn't get a ton of like backups versus backups reps, which might give you kind of some understanding of the relative position of these players, but we still got some. And also when they play, they will be playing against starters in the regular season. So there is some benefit or value in this kind of calibration too. So with that in mind, I think, for me, the biggest concerns that come out of the game are what's happening with that receiving group. Like, yeah, I'm concerned about the Vikings offensive line depth, but at the same time, like the primary backup tackle didn't play in this game, right? We didn't get Justin Skule in this game. And we got Henry Burden at left tackle, which I don't think that he played spectacularly. I know his PFF grade is like pretty good, but I don't agree with that, I guess. I don't know how else to put it. He was actually, I thought he was a better run blocker than he was a pass protector, and his run block score is actually, I mean, they're both in the green, but his run block score is quite a bit worse than his pass block score. So I don't know, that's a curiosity. But he's not going to play for the Vikings unless you've got a catastrophic series of injuries. At which point, like, are you really that upset that you're like OT4 is bad? No. He's almost certainly not even making the roster. He would be, he would hope to make a practice squad and be in elevation at that point. So you could be concerned about the state of the offensive line, but the primary backup tackle isn't there. I didn't pay a ton of attention to Walter Rouse, but it didn't pop out to me as being a huge issue. I know that, again, if we're talking about PFF grades, his pass block score was pretty bad. So it could be the case that I'm missing something there. But up the middle, guards, Blake Brandel was actually fine, and I think that he's the primary backup interior offensive lineman. And I think you're basically in a good spot unless you get significant injuries. That's not the area where I'm more concerned about depth. I'm mostly concerned about depth from the perspective of wide receiver. I thought, Lucky Jackson was kind of emerging. He had taken a bunch of wide receiver first team reps as, Jalen Naylor was out for various portions of camp, or Jordan Addison, wasn't participating. And or Justin Jefferson, obviously, who only recently just got activated for practice. So we saw Lucky Jackson with the ones, and he'd been getting great reviews. And we saw him in preseason week 1. It was great. And then he dropped 2 passes, and then he missed he made another mistake on top of that. So really bad game from him, and we just don't have a substantial sample to work off of with him. So it's really difficult to figure out, kind of what the truth is with him. But it does, I think, decrease our confidence. Same thing with Ty Felton. I wasn't really enthused by what I saw. Thayer Thomas, I thought, he got a lot of targets, but he didn't play well. And that's kind of you could maybe make an argument for Miles Price as a receiver. He's probably the best of the receivers when it comes to special teams capability, aside from Ty Felton. And that's a question about how comfortable you are with Ty Felton's potential propensity to fumble. So that's the area where I'm mostly concerned about, depth is at receiver. Defensively, though, I thought there were a couple of interesting things, some schematically and some just kind of on a player perspective. Schematically, what popped out is like you said, James, the Vikings are not, revealing their hand, right? They're not doing stuff that is going to be unique and exotic when it comes to the regular season. But for every individual team, what qualifies as unique and exotic is relative, right? And the Vikings are a crazy team. And so what they were doing in the preseason is stuff I typically never see in the preseason. And mind you, I said in the last episode or a couple episodes ago that the preseason has gotten more complex as time has gone on, which I think that's a good thing, but I understand why the preseason wasn't particularly complex, 10 years ago. But we saw a lot of blitzes and stuff like that in the past couple of years. But the Vikings are doing stuff that you feel like a team would use as their change-ups during the regular season. So a couple of things that stood out to me are, actually mostly what they were doing with the corners. So on some of these reps, they were sending outside corners on blitzes, typically field side, not boundary side. Oh, sorry, it's typically boundary side, not field side. So the difference between boundary and field side is just kind of who's closer to the sideline, based off of where the ball is on the hash marks. And so boundary side is, as you'd expect, closer to the boundary. The ball is set up closer to the boundary, and for that corner. And so they've got less space to work with, which means on the other side, the field side, they've got more space to work with. And so typically it was a boundary side corner, but it's still a very a nickel corner blitzing. That's super understandable because there's not a ton of ground to close. It's still, much more ground than an edge rusher or a blitzer up the middle, but it's not as much. But they're sending outside corners on blitzes. It's crazy stuff. Also, they're having these corners do a lot of invert coverage, it looked like to me. And so invert is when you have a cornerback play as if they're a safety after the snap. In a sense, you kind of always get that with cover 3 because they're playing a deep third, but we don't really use the term invert for that. And I was saying earlier, I was on Marcus Whitman's YouTube channel. I don't know if he's released the episode yet, but I was on his channel recently as he was previewing the Vikings. He's the franchise guy on YouTube. He does a bunch of Madden content. And I talked about how I thought that the Vikings might use more invert coverage this year because I am not really confident in how they feel about their back-end free safety work into high coverage, because I think that Theo Jackson is going to be playing a free safety role, to replace Cameron Bynum, but I don't think he's going to be replacing Cameron Bynum snaps. I think Josh Metellus is going to be getting 800, 900, possibly 1,100 snaps, which is what Harrison Smith had last year. He might play every snap. And if that's the case, you're in kind of a problem when you want to disguise and get to too high coverage, because he's not really a free safety. You're going to have to do it sometimes, of course. And I'm sure, if you do it, a fair number of times, it's not a problem. But, if you do it a lot, the closing speed is going to be an issue for him. He's not, in my opinion, a wonderful candidate to play a 2 high, and certainly not a 1 high role as a safety deep in back end coverage. And so that would be what you would ask somebody like a Theo Jackson to do, right? And if that's the case, and you only have him out there for 600 snaps, which I think is something like what Josh Metellus did last year, if you only have him out there for 600 snaps, then that's 500 snaps a year, nearly half of them that you're not going to be able to rotate into 2 high, except maybe 80, 90 snaps with Metellus. And that's really uncomfortable for a coordinator, or it seems to me that it'd be uncomfortable for a coordinator who wants to disguise as much as Brian Flores does, right? And so they're going to have to find some way to get into cover 2 when they only have 2 safeties on the field. And so what I said on the show was that I think they're going to do a lot of invert coverage. We've got a cornerback lined up on the outside. I suppose you could just have a nickel corner do it, and it happens all the time when it's actually a safety playing nickel corner. But invert is typically, we call it, when it's an outside corner plays, to the side, sometimes even rolled up in press. And then as soon as the ball is snapped, they bail and immediately try to engage in cover in playing safety as cover 2. And I saw Dwight McLaughlin and Zmiah Vaughn do that maybe like 6 times, maybe 4, but it did it quite a few times for a preseason game. And that's like a look that you reserve for like red zone in the regular season. And it's so strange. And so they're doing all of this exotic stuff, which makes me kind of curious about like, well, what are they going to do when it matters? And they're cooking up these things that they don't want anyone to see. So that's what stood out to me. Individual player performances. Elijah Williams, outstanding again, had 3 pressures, had 4 tackles, including an assist. He had a fantastic game. Not perfect. I thought that he got pushed around a little bit more in this game at the line of scrimmage. When they were just kind of moving around in the run game a little bit more than in the previous game, but certainly playing a lot better than I would expect a 5th defensive tackle to play. So that's pretty cool. I talked about him in the last episode. Jonathan Harris played really well. I thought, Gabe Murphy, who I think has one of the lower scores here for PFF or whatever, I thought that he played really well. He missed a couple of tackles here or there, but that doesn't really concern me. I'm just a lot less concerned about missed tackles for defensive linemen, because very often a missed tackle still results in a tackle for loss because they've slowed down the ball carrier. So it's not a huge issue for me. Sometimes they're, the last line of defense, and that seems to be more of a schematic problem than it is a deep concern about the player. But yeah, so I assume that's why he got the bad grade from PFF. But yeah, I thought he got in the backfield really well. I thought he was kind of okay against the run, not outstanding. But yeah, I think that he has essentially demonstrated that he's, he should be the 4th edge rusher, and the Vikings have a couple of options here, right? With how they're going to, so like Bo Richter is probably the 5th edge rusher. You've got, some interesting options, moving Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, who had, I thought it was up and down. The broadcast kept on talking about how good it was, and there were a bunch of really good plays, a couple of bad plays, not too concerned, but you could have Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins do some edge work. And you can go kind of down the list. Like Tyler Batty didn't have an outstanding performance throughout the preseason, but he had a couple of highlight moments in both games, and so he could be kind of your 6th edge. So I like the depth there. At cornerback, I know that there's a conversation about like, well, after Mekhi Blackman, who is basically your nickel backup, what do you do? Is it Zmiah Vaughn or Dwight McLaughlin? And I think we should be limiting it to those 2. I don't think Ambry Thomas or Keenan Garber has done anything to kind of change that conversation. Reddy Stewart played in the slot a little bit. I don't think he's done anything to change the conversation. And I'm honestly fine with either of them based off their performance in these 2 games. I don't know that they played outstandingly well in this last game. I thought that they had kind of lost track of some stuff. And, Zmiah Vaughn, I thought in invert coverage wasn't doing an outstanding job when he's playing a zone that's really far off the landmark of the receiver that he's the closest to. He's kind of a little bit late to click and close, stuff like that. But as like a 4th, 5th cornerback, I thought he played better than you typically see out of those guys. And so I played Zmiah Vaughn ahead of Dwight McLaughlin, but I don't really care. I think both of them are interesting wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 type options. So that's kind of where I'm at. The Vikings defensive tackle options are super deep, so that's exciting. So LDR, Taki Taimani, maybe Elijah Williams, certainly Jalen Redmond. An embarrassment of riches for defensive tackles there, which is kind of cool to see. But that's kind of it. I mean, you mentioned we don't have a backup quarterback. I think Max Brosmer is making a legitimate case for why he should be considered QB2. I mean, he didn't complete the game-winning drive or anything like that, and obviously that pick isn't wonderful. The pick that should have been a score. I thought the ball was beginning to get out. I genuinely think, but it's the preseason, so the refs are just like, we don't got to do this. But Max Brosmer, I thought, played pretty well. Not as well as week 1, but pretty well. And he deserves to at least be considered for that competition.
So who's playing themselves out of a job right now?
I would say Sam Howell is, after a pretty good week one, Sam Howell is. Brett Rippon we didn't see enough of. He didn't play himself into a job, and in some senses that means he played himself out of one. But that's probably the best argument. I think maybe Joe Huber a little bit is kind of losing his shine as an outstanding player. Gavin Bartholomew, by not playing at all, might be playing himself out of a job, but I don't know that any of these backup tight ends have done enough to really take over there. But I think Benjamin Urasek is probably the best blocker out of them. But yeah, Lucky Jackson or Ty Felton might be playing themselves out of a job. Ty Chandler, probably the best example of someone playing himself out of a job. Xavier Scott just seems to be like the better running back at this point.
It is kind of funny, and I know we mentioned this last episode, but it seems like his role is reversed. Like, that's just how that's happening right now. He's no longer the exciting guy that can get you 4 to 5 just on a random whim. It's now the replacement, and that's just how time works.
Yeah, they always love the young and sexy.
I've always said that.
That's you to a T, James.
I didn't say that. All I said is I've always said that people love that, whatever. So with all of this information from this Pats game, what exactly are we to expect in the third preseason game against the Titans?
I think we're going to see a fair amount of Max Brosmer. It would be so exciting to see if he played with some second stringers. I think we're going to see a lot of exposure to some of these depth receivers. So a lot of Lucky Jackson, maybe give Thayer Thomas another chance. But yeah, I think that they're going to kind of, maybe Gabe Murphy doesn't play as often because he's played so well that you don't see him a lot. Maybe we're going to see if any of these guys can kind of redeem themselves on special teams. Somebody like a Ty Felton getting more time, or Miles Price getting more time, or again Thayer Thomas. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I just feel like the Titans game is just going to be the second, third, and fourth quarters of the Vikings game, or of the Patriots game that we just had, but for 4 quarters instead of 3. So it's not going to be that different. I know that sometimes you sign kind of like some emergency guys because you don't have enough after you've locked up the guys that are going to make the roster. And I don't know that this year we're going to get like a Brad Sorensen or who's that LSU quarterback that was not Case Cookus that year? Danny Etling. Like, you're not going to get that guy, probably. So I don't know. I'd like to see a lot of Brosmer though.
Before we move on, do we have a kick returner this year?
Kick returner, I think we do. Punt returner, I don't. I think kick returner, you can be reasonably confident it's a combination of Xavier Scott and Ty Felton, because there's 2 kick returners on these kickoffs now. But I think at punt returner, that's and it doesn't have to be Ty Felton again. The fumble on special teams is a concern. It could be Miles Price, but I think Xavier Scott's going to be one of them, and I think Miles Price or Ty Felton's the other one. I'm not that concerned about the kickoff return. I'm really concerned about the punt return.
It hurts to watch every time it happens. Like, you just sit there, like, it's not. I know that it's hard to pine for former Vikings players and everything, but it'd just be nice to have that one thing taken care of. Just that one thing. But speaking of which, I mean, at least the kicks are going in, so there is that. The Vikings can rest easy that now that we're never going to have a kicking problem again. That's going to be great. Sign up for the Hell League, folks.
And we might talk about it over at Wide Left.
Be fantastic. Well, as we said, there's not much to talk about as far as the game is concerned, and realistically, it's happened a couple of days ago, and it wasn't particularly interesting then, and it's not interesting now. So we are going to go to the mailbag and speak a little bit about some around the league stuff, because the Daniel Jones thing is what dominated the headlines today. So that's going to be the first place that we go. Let's go to the mailbag. Luke Braun's dad asks, did we lose out on a clear starting quarterback, Daniel Jones?
Yeah, so the Colts announced that Daniel Jones is going to be starting for the Colts to begin the season. And, I thought if maybe Anthony Richardson had a preseason week 2 that was about as good as his week 1, that maybe he'd win the job. So I thought it was kind of close, but it's tough when you take yourself out of the game. It's just really difficult to rebuild trust. So they were probably looking for reasons not to start him, which, means I was wrong. I did predict that Anthony Richardson would start. I get. So I've seen a couple of people say that this sets up the Vikings to get a 3rd round compensatory pick because Daniel Jones was activated. He was on the Vikings roster and then he walked in free agency. That means they'll get a compensatory pick for him. I don't know that that's the case. I think that the best that they can do is a 4th based off of the contract and anticipated snap count. I was looking at the way that Over the Cap projects compensatory picks and using kind of their math and projecting a 100% snap rate or a 95% snap rate for Daniel Jones. He doesn't really get up to the 3rd round compensatory pick level. And there's only 4 projected 3rd round compensatory picks. And Sam Darnold's one of them, right? So I don't know that he'll get there, but the snap count certainly helps because it solidifies that it's going to be a 4th round compensatory pick. As for missing out on a starting quarterback, technically he is going to be a starting quarterback. That's true, I guess.
Zen Cubit asks, has there ever been a more beneficial single game roster activation than Daniel Jones being activated only for a single time on the Vikings roster?
A one-time roster activation, I would have to imagine that's about the most ideal scenario you could get. I can't imagine I'm sure someone is going to reply with hey, what did you in 1982? But no, I can't think of one.
No, the butterfly effect here is the only thing you could get close to.
Right, yeah.
But that's pretty ridiculous. Eric the Red asks, could Kevin O'Connell have saved Anthony Richardson?
Yes.
No explanation
next
needed.
Question.
Yeah.
Next question. Yeah.
Yannick Eckhart asks, should the Vikings try to fill the tight end 3 opening with Anthony Richardson?
So
Trey Lance isn't going to be available.
Trey Lance isn't walking through that door. So there's a long and storied tradition of turning these super athletic quarterbacks into tight ends. Marquise Gray, Logan Thomas, Tyree Jackson, Carson Wentz. There's a long and storied tradition of that. And Anthony Richardson definitely has the athleticism for that. I don't see that happening this year. But certainly in time, think about it. That guy is a crazy good athlete.
He just needs a different location, a different coach, and
a different position.
Different. Really, he needs to get his groove back. I suggest a house in the hills in Tuscany. Delta BC Dad asks, for our Reefs, this is actually a football question corner. We don't actually visit this corner often enough. Last season, I asked if we should be skeptical of the Vikings defense. Was secretly less good than analytics suggested, despite playing really well against mediocre team offenses. And you said that great defenses make average offenders look bad. That's what we observed from the Vikings defense, and we should have confidence in them against good teams. Then in Week 17 in the wild card games, they happened. Is it possible/probable that the Vikings defense will regress this year against advanced analytics, but actually be more capable of beating great teams than last year?
So, it makes it sound like the Vikings were only good against average and below average offenses last year. And that's not really the case. They were good against a number of top 12 offenses. So San Francisco, especially when San Francisco was better on offense, they did a really good job there. Arizona was a top 12 offense in points per drive. Green Bay, they did well both times against them, and they were a top 6, top 7 offense in points per drive. They did well against a Texans team that didn't end up in the top 12 offensively, but at the time the Vikings played them were much healthier than kind of later down in the road. They were good against good offenses. It's just there's a difference between kind of like broadly understanding that they'll be good against good offenses because they've been good against average offenses, and knowing that there are maybe some specific matchups that are pretty bad. And I don't mean player matchups. I mean, it seems like Ben Johnson, who unfortunately stayed in the division, but now he's working with Caleb Williams, so we'll see. But it seems like Ben Johnson and Sean McVay just like get it when it comes to the Brian Flores defense. And they're the only ones that like consistently do this to them. So I don't know that this is like they're only good against average offenses or below average offenses. Like, no, they did really well against some pretty good offenses, including, offenses like the top 5-6, in points per drive. Like it's fine. They're fine. But that's Delta, you cannot shame me for that take.
As a follow-up, does this mean statistics and statisticians are bad?
Well, it doesn't mean that, but they are bad.
Yeah, we've always said that on the show.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Wet and Reckless asks, call your shot. How many UDFAs make the final 53 roster? What happens to these players' contracts when they make day one and get cut for cut down day replacements? Seems like an especially cruel rug pull.
So if they make the day one roster and then get cut, my understanding is what happens is they receive their roster bonus, which a lot of them might have, but don't receive because they would get activated into a minimum salary. Essentially, it's like, I think it's like this year it's like $520,000. And they don't receive any of that because those salaries are played out by game week. So no, they don't make that money. But usually what happens in that circumstance is that they're on the practice squad, and that gets you something like $170,000 a year if you're on there for all 18 weeks. So that's, that sucks, but that's what happens. The players that I think have like enough of a chance to make the roster that is worth mentioning them by name, that are undrafted free agent rookies, are Miles Price, Joe Huber, Ben Urasek, Max Brosmer, Elijah Williams, Austin Keys, and Zemiah Vaughn. Now, I didn't talk about Austin Keys at all these past 2 episodes. He's been doing a ton of work on special teams and, obviously as a backup linebacker. I actually don't think it's crazy likely that he makes it. I only mention it because he's playing reasonably well. Not outstandingly well. I wouldn't say he's like outplaying like Kobe King, right? But he's playing like reasonably well, and so I just wanted to bring him up. But of these guys, I am pretty confident that I'm really confident that Zemiah Vaughn makes the roster. I'm pretty confident that Max Brosmer makes the roster. And that gives us like 2, right? Which I think is the number that we had last year or 2 years ago, something like that. But I do think that of Miles Price, Joe Huber, Ben Urasek, and Elijah Williams, we'll get another one. So I think we'll see 3, possibly 4, but I doubt it. Urasek is an interesting one because none of the backup tight ends have been super interesting. Urasek's doing pretty well as a blocker, but we just don't know what's up with Gavin Bartholomew, or if the Vikings just decide he gets to make the roster despite not having done anything. So I don't know, but I think there's a decent shot for Urasek. Elijah Williams, it's just too much. We were talking about this on the Viking Squad show. Again, wonderful name. None of you can complain about how wonderful that name is. Elijah Williams is just like if you keep 7 defensive tackles, which Luke Braun was proposing because he's a madman. Then Elijah Williams makes it, but I don't really see it otherwise, but it's worth discussing. Now I know a lot of people might ask, what about Xavier Scott? He's not a rookie. He was an undrafted free agent in 2024, but I think he does make the roster. Joe Huber, I feel like that one's tough. It depends on if you keep 9 or 10. If you keep 10, I think he certainly makes it, but I think he's on the outside looking in with like Michael Juergens and Walter Rouse and Justin School and Blake Brandel. But yeah, I think we'll see 3, and I think 2 have really good shots.
Next question is going to be from Room Don Sharif, who asks, how long is it appropriate to wear, quote, blank winter material or blank winter apparel in public / non-workout gear? division winner, playoff year, specific gear, conference winner, and finally league championship gear. Follow-up question, if the Vikings make the Super Bowl and lose again, how much would you pay for the Viking Super Bowl winner merch?
An unreasonably large amount of money. To answer that second question, I would pay more for that than the market rate for the Chiefs Super Bowl, whatever it is that year, right? Or whoever beats the Vikings in that, the Bills, because that would be funny. Actually, if it was the Bills, their winning merchant, if they win against the Vikings in the Super Bowl, that merchandise would go so quickly. The price would be so high.
Yeah.
And I would pay whatever that is for the Vikings winner merch. For people who don't know, they make the merch for both sides as if they're winners before the game. And then they donate the losers' winning shirts to other countries. It was a joke that you saw like a bunch of them in like sub-Saharan Africa. And I don't know, like that's like one of those jokes that like feels like it might be racist, but I can't explain how, so it probably isn't. It's just like,
well,
it's weird.
If it literally does happen,
it does literally happen, right? Is the other thing, right? And so it's like, okay, yeah. And I would like them to divert that to eBay so that I might participate and get 2025 Vikings Super Bowl champions merch. So the thing about that is that transcends the rules we're about to discuss, because that's like funny in a different way. So I'm glad that you identified workout gear, right? Because it's always acceptable to wear like 1985 conference championship winner shirts, right? Like if you're working out. But I think that in general, like in public, I feel like obviously you were right to parse it out by a level of accomplishment in year. I would say like playoff participant type stuff, basically a month, if that. That's lame. Do they make shirts for we made the playoffs? I hope not. For conference winner, which they do make gear for, I would say half a year, maybe. Certainly well before training camp starts for the next year. For Super Bowl winner, I think, and this just massively increases it, I think maybe forever? I don't know. I feel like you could wear it a lot. Like there's like an uncanny valley kind of moment, right? Where for like maybe 5 years out, it feels stupid and weird, but 7 years out, it's back, right? Because if someone from Chicago is wearing a 1985 Chicago Bears Super Bowl winner shirt, I think aside from the fact that it's specifically the Bears and that's annoying, I think that's fine, right? Like if you've got a Jets Super Bowl III shirt, that rules, right? So at some point it goes, so for the first year, it diminishes in appropriateness and value until I want to say year 5. And then it starts moving back up in value. Once you're 10 years out, you start hitting a really sweet spot. 20 is amazing. 30 is outstanding. 60 is incredible. So, I think that's kind of the way to look at it. But when it comes to like conference championship, that to me has a pretty short lifespan.
Unless it's hilariously wrong.
Yeah, if it's wrong, for sure, you get to wear it forever.
I just sent you a link that you need to see.
Oh no!
I nearly had a line on this for much cheaper. Somebody is out here selling 2009 NFC champion gear for the Vikings with like the hanky with it too for like $100. I am so close. $100 is just outside of what I would pay for. Right? Like if it were 80, if it did not
exactly.
if this was gonna go for 80, it's funny what 20, because I don't care about $20, but like it's absolute principle. Whether or not you would spend $100 on this or 80, like I'm a vinyl record collector, and I admit like how dumb and a bougie like thing it is. I'm not like a collector in that I want sealed copies of like, no, I listen to them, so I have to sit there every once in a while and go, I'm not paying $35 for this. I'm going to listen to it 3 times. I can't.
Also, the shipping, by the way, is $13.
Yeah, so
I didn't even think about.
Definitely over $100 for that. But there is somebody out in these streets trying to get you to buy 2009 NFC Championship Vikings gear. And it's not the first time I've seen this particular picture.
I'm reading the item description. These were the official on-field / locker room t-shirt and towel for the Vikings if they won. Great, very rare collector's item. And then the next line, in parentheses, brand new. What do you mean?
Yeah, that's a hell of a thing. I had a line on the legitimate item a couple of years ago and was going to buy it and bring it to a live show. And the guy stopped emailing me after a bit because I was trying to get the price down. But it would have been astonishingly wonderful to have in attendance as part of a cursed item thing. But
God, this rules.
Yeah, that's... Okay. I hate that I like it. It's...
Right, exactly.
$95. Drop it another $15 and free shipping and we'll talk.
Exactly, yeah. And drop the shipping down a ton.
Yeah. Let's go to Chandler, who asks... What bench player from the Zimmer era would most help this team? By this, I mean less what Zimmer era bench player was the best, and more what do these Vikings need depth at where they had in the past?
This one was hard for me because a lot of these bench players ended up starting. And so it really forces us to ask the question of like what qualifies as a bench player. And so the ones that I thought about that could legitimately help the team, aside from Marcus Sherrills, obviously, because you just need a punt returner. And he's like not a bad cornerback 5, but mostly you just need a punt returner. Are Anthony Harris, who did end up starting, Mackenzie Alexander, who did end up starting, Mike Harris, who did end up starting, Tom Johnson, what a bench player, dude, who did end up starting, Jaron Curse, who I don't believe we would ever qualify as a starter, even if he officially got some starts. I don't know if he did. And then Hilton Hill. He also technically started. And those are the guys. Because like I'm looking at like the cornerback depth. I'm like, well, the Vikings had such good corners in the Zimmer era. Who are their backups? And it's like Chris Boyd. I'm like, no. I'll roll the dice with Zemiah Vaughn.
Yeah,
I guess.
No.
I'm good. I guess Duke Shelley's a Kevin O'Connell guy. But yeah, that one's a little bit tough. Technically, Terrence Newman, I guess, but I'm not going to count him as a bench guy. So with all of those, I would say, I would like to have cornerback depth, but it's really difficult to like think of Mackenzie Alexander's cornerback depth because it's just Mekhi Blackman. It's just corner stuff. It's slots corner stuff. I would like Mike Harris's depth. Tom Johnson would be fun, but they clearly have enough defensive tackle depth. Jaron Curse is interesting, but the Vikings actually don't need his specific role, so I don't know. So it's difficult, but I'm gonna go. Jaron Curse would be the most interesting because of maybe how Brian Flores would use him, but I'm gonna go with Holton Hill, who obviously is not in the league anymore for a reason, and it was just like 4 years ago that he was in the league, and so it's not because he's old. But I think that just having more competition there, especially for an outside corner, would be nice, especially now that we're a little bit more permissive about marijuana, which seemed to be like the primary issue when it came to keeping him on the field.
Let's go to Kenneth Allen, who asks, the backup quarterback battle seems to be going very poorly. Is this a real cause for concern? And do you expect the Vikings to do anything to address it? Example, add a veteran quarterback, cut at the end of preseason, or are the Vikings just going to go all in on JJ? And if it falls on him, if it fails, it's just tank time.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I've been floating the idea that like trade for Kenny Pickett. Joe Flacco is officially named the starter in Cleveland. It's going to be difficult for them to keep 4 quarterbacks, and I think they want to keep both Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, which leaves Kenny Pickett on the outs. He is hurt, right? So that's something to kind of keep in mind. But I would probably think about Kenny Pickett, but I think you're not going to get him unless you trade for him, right? And so guys that like might get cut that you technically like Tommy DeVito's a veteran, but I wouldn't like treat him as a veteran. Like he's not like teaching other guys that much. Right. I think that's probably the closest. I can't think of like any other quarterbacks that, I mean, like Anthony Richardson doesn't count as like a veteran, right? I'm like, I can't think of any other quarterbacks that might count. This one's tough. But yeah, I think that they will find a way to grab like a veteran of some sort at quarterback. And hey, maybe Kirk Cousins just get. I mean, he's not going to get cut. Maybe I don't know. Maybe figure something out with that whole deal, whatever's going on over there. Actually, the Giants might not, because they got like Russ, Jackson Dart, Jameis Winston, and Tommy DeVito. So no chance Tommy DeVito makes it. But what if there was a chance Tommy DeVito made it? Then yeah, it's probably Jameis and not Russ. But like, I don't personally like Jameis because of how much of a pass he's gotten for what he's done in the past. Obviously, he's like a super funny and hilarious guy. And I don't know how much he can like teach people because he's just like slinging it. But when it just comes to purely on-field stuff, I mean, the Vikings were really content with Nick Mullins, and this guy is just Nick Mullins, but more, right? So I could see that for sure. Yeah, I don't know. Is Nick Foles still quarterback?
Cannot. I would have problems with the idea of Nick Foles in a Vikings jersey.
Well, I mean, they did it with Brett Favre.
I'm aware, but look, a lot of things about 2009 never happened. That's right.
We got a shirt commemorating it.
Exactly. That's precisely how all of this works for $95 plus shipping. Also from Kenneth Allen, given Arif's past business investments, I am looking forward to many future child columnists joining the burgeoning wide left empire. Now that Arif has fled the U.S. in favor of Canada, how will he maintain the peace given they don't look as kindly as he does on child labor?
Okay, first of all, I don't officially employ child labor in any capacity for anything that I'm involved in, nor am I officially invested in any businesses that have been alleged to use child labor. I mean, I don't control like my IRA. I don't know who they invest in, maybe, but like that's true. If it's true for me, it's true for you. So you can't.
I've used more child labor recently than you have, but it's my son, and that's legally allowed.
In most cases, in a lot of circumstances, but not entirely, as Crumble actually found out. But no, I don't like. And also, like, I'm not gonna look if we're going to continue the bit, which I want to clarify for like any law enforcement officers listening to this podcast. Honestly, somehow, I don't know that we've been treating you all that well in this podcast, but
well, you've been accusing them a lot of stealing your car, so that does put a damper on your relationship.
Yeah, officially we'd call that an accusation or an allegation, but I think that's a fact. That's not like
it's more good fun. Then
yeah,
for everyone but you.
Right. Yeah, everyone had a lot of fun. Anyway, so for anyone who might enforce these kinds of laws, the next thing I'm going to say is not necessarily true. But were I invested in businesses that employed child labor, they would be in businesses that did not require the child to like make decisions, right? It would be in like manufacturing or like food production, and it would be along the lines of like, you don't have to think, you just have to like, screw this thing together or like put some flour in the bowl or whatever. Like you just don't worry about it, right? It's all like pre-done and you just need somebody to move object A to object B, right? It's not going to be like in a creative role. I would never do that. And at the moment, there's nothing at wide left that doesn't require a lot of decisions, whether that's writing or editing or anything, right? So I'm never going to use child labor at wide left. Because it's illegal first, but second, it wouldn't even be good. I just want to
if it were good, we could talk about the quasi-legality of this situation.
Yeah, we just incorporated Iowa, and then we'd be fine.
These skibbity kids can't put words together; it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just going to get a bunch of what they call it, vibe coding, right? Vibe writing. A bunch of ChatGPT 5. ChatGPT 5 is supposed to be better than 4 and 4.0, but whatever. I get just a bunch of AI articles, and I'd be like, write it. And they'd be like, I did. And I'd be like, no, you used AI. And they'd be like, yeah, that's what I said. I wrote it. And it's like not helpful. So no, the wide left will not be employing child labor because it's immoral. And also it's illegal. And also it's not even helpful. in that order of like why we wouldn't do that.
I feel like it. Well, we'll talk later. Eric Thompson asks, this really doesn't have much to do with the Vikings, but I feel like you're doing your audience a disservice if you didn't at least broach the hashtag Stafford died weeks ago topic on your next episode. Real Avril of Theseus vibes here. Oh boy. Yes, actually, let's talk about this. There is a hashtag going around that Matt Stafford died weeks ago, and that every time the Rams are posting pictures of him practicing or being a part of the community, there are truthers out there, much like the Melissa truthers, and they're posting, no, that's impossible. Matt Stafford died weeks ago. And
I don't want to associate the level of credibility that Matthew Stafford truthers and Melissa truthers have, because the Melissa truthers are fighting a righteous battle.
They truly are. By the way, we are beginning to go off the rails. We still have some football stuff.
This is a football. It's a Matthew Stafford.
We are talking about football here, in a manner of speaking. A football player who died weeks ago.
Right. Someone was like, "Hey, he and Damar Hamlin have been having a lot of discussions."
Jesus! Wow.
Right. But no, I think my favorite was they took a still image of him walking into practice, and then they added the little Silverline trailer or whatever it's called, Dreamline trailer, that has the weird IR reparative therapy, whatever thing in there. Like it's something, I don't know. Type thing that he's like recovering in, and they just like Photoshop that into the background, and then they just put a bunch of red circles and arrows everywhere, and then just tweeted out, they want us to believe this is real.
Yeah.
just like randomly.
The pictures, I love the pictures of like trying to discern the difference between the two Staffords' teeth. Like they're clearly the same, but it's very funny.
That's so good. Yeah, so Stafford is dead. It didn't help that like Tom Pelissero, whoever tweeted out like he's alive and well, and everyone's like, why did you have to say it like that?
Yeah, that's oddly specific. I'm talking about a dead man like that. Somebody had posted, and I wish I could find it. Somebody had posted some like Matt Stafford video they'd put together that was spliced with things from Twilight for no reason. And I was howling at just how like ridiculous it was. And it was talking about how Matt Stafford had passed. And I was like, I don't know what sparkly Matt Stafford has to do with anything, but
right.
The internet is gone. Sometimes the internet just isn't worth it. And that's kind of where we're at today. In a lot of aspects, actually. Old Salty Dog asks, would you take the Vikings offensive line as currently comprised, or an offensive line entirely comprised of top-level sumo wrestlers? Who has the better body control and technique?
I don't know, man. Okay, so if I were to attempt to figure out who was like the better all-around athlete, and I tried to come up with like a universal way to measure all-around athleticism, come up with as many athletic traits that are that are measurable as possible, and run sumo wrestlers and offensive linemen in the same weight class through those tests, or like adjusted for weight through those tests, I think that it is likely that the very best athletes are probably offensive linemen, but on average, high-level sumo wrestlers are more athletic than high-level offensive linemen. That's my guess. I don't have any evidence for why I would think that's the case, right? That's all around athleticism. That's not maybe all that helpful. This scenario posits having the five best sumo wrestlers just replace the Vikings offensive. That would be a disaster for so many reasons. For the Vikings, it's not like a call the ambulance for you kind of. It's not like one of those things. It would be bad for the Vikings. And I think so. It's tough here because I don't want to. I'm not really an expert enough in sumo at all. What do I mean enough? I'm not an expert at all in sumo. Certainly not knowledgeable enough about sumo to really answer this question very well. And so I might just be wrong when I say this, but my intuition is, and I don't want to undermine how technically precise sumo is and has to be, because it is very technically precise, and matches are won and lost on inches of footwork and stuff like that. Like, it is important, right? Technique is critical. I do think that the technical requirements for high level offensive line play are more demanding. Again, maybe that's just because I'm more familiar with football, and so I think that it would be a disaster if you had, Onosato and a bunch of other sumo wrestlers like Abi. I don't think that would help, right? I think they would be the worst offensive line in the league immediately. But would they perform better as 5 offensive linemen than the 5 best offensive linemen? Say, and not most athletic, but the 5 best offensive linemen. And which, who is that even? Christian Darrisaw might be in that category, but maybe Creed Humphrey. I don't know. Now that Zach Martin's retired and Quentin Nelson's no longer the guy, I don't who's the best guard. I'm sure I'm missing a very obvious answer here. Let's just take a look at the PFF scores for 2024 and just let them think for me. Nothing wrong with that. No, I don't believe it's Chris Lindstrom. Actually, I don't trust you when you say that. Quinn Miners, I guess. I don't know. These guards are not. They're not like the guards I remember back in my day.
We need to take this country back from poor guards.
Yeah. Jordan Mailata is the highest PFF score of any tackle. I would take Lane Johnson personally. We could say Tristan Wirfs, Lane Johnson, maybe. I'm not going to go with Teron Armstead, even though he's ranked high here. Maybe Penei Sewell, and screw it, Trent Williams, and then I don't know if that's 5 yet. I think it is, but if it isn't, Christian Darrisaw. We have them play, right? I think that certainly they would not rise. Certainly they would not rise to the level of Yokozuna, right? But would they rise to Ozeki? I don't think so. I don't think they would get close. But could they get into the top, the Makuchi, the top division, the Bashas that people consistently talk about? I think maybe one of them could. I wouldn't know who it is, but I think for the most part, no. I think that they might. I think that they might perform better than the sumo wrestlers would in the NFL. I think they would perform better in a basho collectively than the 5 sumo wrestlers would starting in the NFL.
So this really just needs to be a pros versus Joes thing.
Yeah, we got I mean, by the way, Kofi, who used to do SB Nations, he's doing a bunch of videos. He's got a Pros versus Joes series, extremely funny, really great stuff. He's covering the Pros versus Joes Spike TV show from a while ago. People trying to tackle Herschel Walker, take hits from Romanowski. It rules. Check that out. Shouts to Kofi.
Let's go to B Percenter, who asks, if a place kicker was guaranteed to make every field goal under 70 yards, would he go in the first round? Yes. Also, why would the Vikings select him and then cut him 2 games into his rookie season?
It would have to be off-field, right? Because when Daniel Carlson was cut, he was just missing kicks. You at least understood why it was happening, even if you didn't necessarily agree with it.
You couldn't be mad at him being released. It was the right move to do. It sucked that he fixed it.
Yeah, well, it sucks for the Vikings that he fixed it. But
yeah.
The point has been made multiple times, including by him, that he wouldn't have gotten better had he not been released because it gave him time to focus on his technique, which was broken. So it's not that the Vikings made the wrong move. It's that there was no winning move, right? So there's that. But he was missing kicks, right? And it would have to be they would cut him. Now, if he's gambling, he's probably just suspended forever. So that wouldn't matter. But they cut him because Peyton Manning didn't like him. Remember when Peyton Manning just got mad at Vanderyak?
Yes.
And yeah.
It's a great story. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. But it'd be something like that, or he said something bad at a Kenny Chesney concert, and he sits out a year in the NFL, and some team is well, now that everybody's forgotten it, we can just hire him again. And then he just makes every kick, and then like 10 years down the line, people are gonna be like, yeah, I wonder why the Vikings cut him. Well, I guess there's no way to find out.
Nope.
So that's probably, it would have to be an off-field, right? I can't imagine that there'd be an on-field reason. But like, no, that guy, like, if you knew he was going to make every kick, he'd go in the first round. If he made every kick in college below 70 yards, yeah, he'd probably still go in the first round. Because like college teams are generally not that offensively explosive, especially now. Like obviously you can go back a couple of years and see those Big 12 teams. But like if you knew that you didn't have to convert 3rd and 11 at the 50, those kickers would kick so often. And a guy with like 70 kicks a year in college, making every single one of them, that guy's going to go in the first round, whether or not you've got like a metaphysical guarantee that he's going to do it going forward in the future.
Yeah. There's the only way that the Vikings would end up cutting him is if he, tried to run over a parking attendant, a la Randy Moss. That's
he insulted the catering.
Yep, exactly. Football's misandrous niche. We are now going off the rails. For our Reef Strategy Corner, is football strategy harder than chess strategy? All physical considerations aside, asking to own chess nerds, the most boring and arrogant people on the planet.
Okay, I sympathize so much with you on this. I really do. I promise. And I think it's fair to emphasize the level of strategic complexity in football. But the answer is no, at least in my opinion, unfortunately. Chess has gotten really popular recently, which I think is kind of, if anything, reduced the arrogance of chess nerds, because there is some value in democratizing it. And, it is a little bit more mainstream and accessible. So at least that's been my experience with it. I don't like, maybe you've experienced something else with the increase in its popularity and people being really weird and arrogant about it. And if so, that sucks. I'm sorry. But I never played chess at like a super high level. I had a provisional 1500-ish rating. I was told by chess coaches that when I was playing at my best, I could play up to a 1600, which I was almost never playing at my best. So I like reasonably decent at chess 15 years ago. And learning chess strategy and then having to learn football strategy for my job, I would argue that even though it gets really deep and complex, and even though the game always finds new ways to produce new depth and meaning, and you can get to the point where you're talking about, moving your feet, 3 inches to the right or 6 inches to the left and producing an entirely new setup. No, I don't think so. And like, even though, like, I think one of the least, to me anyway, one of the least compelling things that demonstrates the complexity of chess is like talking about how like the number of possible chess games that exist are more than the number of atoms in the universe. Like mathematically, that's true. And if that's the case, then the number of positions that you can see like 11 people on defense organize themselves is also that, right? Because you have like an infinite number of possibilities of like they're 1 inch to the left, 1 inch to the right, right? But like a lot of those differences aren't meaningful. And most importantly, a lot of the positions that, you would set up in, you wouldn't consider as like a strategic consideration, right? And one of the things that made humans so excellent at chess, and one of the reasons that a bunch of chess computers suddenly got a lot better at chess, starting in like the 90s with like Deep Blue, is not because, the increased processing power was a really critical component, of course, but it's not necessarily entirely because of that. The original impetus for why chess machines were getting a lot better at chess is they were a lot better at engaging in heuristics, closing off lines that very early in the process of investigating, sets of moves, you would realize this is stupid. I'm not going to do it. And so you just cut that off and not devote any processing power to that. So heuristics were like a really critical component to why right after Deep Blue, a lot of chess machines were performing really well. And in football, it's all heuristics. You're doing that. Humans are really good at heuristical analysis, which is why they're smarter than ChatGPT, despite not having to spend nearly the same energy at all, right? It's because we engage in heuristics. We very quickly come to decisions about the level of things that we have to deeply analyze and cut off in our framework of thinking all of these other branches of potential thought or evaluation or analysis that would complicate things and be too expensive from a resource perspective to think about. And football is like that. The reason that there's essentially 7 coverage shells is because no other number of coverage shells makes any sense at all. And we've got essentially 3 coverage types, maybe 5. It depends on how you parse it, but it's not a lot, right? You've got man coverage, you've got zone coverage, you've got different kinds of pattern matching. So that's like 3 to 5, right? So, or if you only want to call pattern matching one thing, that's 3 whole types of coverage. If you want to call different types of pattern matching other types, then it's maybe 5 whole coverage types. But it's not that many. And you could have a ton of blitz angles, but they all play off of each other in ways that you can kind of quickly go through. And so I would not argue that football is strategically more complex than chess. I would argue that people overhype the strategic complexity of chess and underhype the strategic complexity of football, and that football is a really strategically beautiful sport to analyze in ways that go significantly underappreciated by most of the population. And chess has this like reverence that has extended, I think, beyond what is reasonable. And we use it in our media a lot of times to demonstrate that a person is smart. And that actually is a very stupid thing to do. And I'm about to dunk on an 8-year-old, so sorry, but
here it comes, here it comes, here it comes.
But when I was on my high school's chess team, we were not a very good chess team. Like I said, I was like a 1500, 1600 player. In high school matches, I never played up to a 1600 level. But when I was on my high school's chess team, I was the second chair, which means I was the second best player on the team, which means our team wasn't very good. And we would go around, we'd play Lakeville, and we did beat Kennedy, I will say that. We played Kennedy, we played Lakeville, we played Chanhassen, we played a bunch of the chess teams around the cities. And we'd almost always lose unless it was Kennedy. And I had the opportunity to play this chess prodigy who had his own individual Russian coach. The Russian coach, I believe, had achieved international master status, which is not quite to the level of grandmaster, but it is like less than 1% of dedicated chess players reach international master status. And that was this kid's coach. And this kid was playing it at above a 2000 rating. And so all of us were like, what an opportunity to play this kid. That's fantastic. We all played him. We all got absolutely demolished, crushed. And what was really cool, though, is that that guy, this kid's personal coach, would go around and give us feedback on our games. He actually ruled. Yeah, this 8-year-old outside of chess has the intelligence of an 8-year-old. Okay, he's stupid. 8-year-olds are stupid. I'm not afraid to say it.
That's a quote. We should put it on a shirt.
And if this 8-year-old, and this is not the first time we've seen child chess prodigies. We have like a whole Searching for Bobby Fischer is about a childhood chess prodigy. His name's Josh something. I totally forget now. But they don't have what we typically associate with intelligence, which that's a whole other conversation. Is situational awareness in football a form of intelligence? Are athletes who know what they need to do engaging in intelligence? People typically would think no, but it is. But if we just kind of use the orthodox definitions of intelligence, this kid could not engage in the media analysis that the average high schooler or the average adult could, but he could demolish 99.99% of the world in chess. But he doesn't know what a giraffe is. Well, no, he's 8. He knows what a giraffe is. But you get what I'm saying, right? He doesn't know that, he knows what a pigeon is, but he doesn't know there's 20 species of pigeon, right? He's stupid. He's 8. It's not his fault. But being good at chess doesn't make you smart. And we've so inculcated our understanding of these hobbies and being elite at them as evidence that you're smart outside of it. When one of the greatest chess players of all time, Bobby Fischer, has the stupidest opinions ever. And that should have disabused us of this notion a long time ago. And so I am so deeply sympathetic to Football Misandrist asking this question. But unfortunately, the answer to the specific question is no, even though the spirit of the question, the answer is yes.
It is unfortunate. Francis Ford Copium asks, for Arif's obscure video game research corner, I'm looking to get into a game called XCOM Enemy Unknown. Should I start with the base game or Long War? This is your fault.
I know you know what XCOM is, right, James? You have to know what XCOM is.
I'm familiar with the name of the series, yes.
Okay, so in 1995, back when my median age was active of the 90s, right?
I love it when you bring that up as opposed to me.
Yeah, right. I mean, someone in the Discord just said my median age in the 90s was 17, so I can't relate. I was like, okay, now it's just a whole thing.
Yeah.
But in 1995, the sequel to the first XCOM game, which was just called the UFO Defense or something like that, was released, The Terror from the Deep. And I loved this game. I played it all the time. Not in 95, probably around like 97, 98. And mind you, again, remember what I just said about 8-year-olds? So I'm like 9. I'm dumb. This game is notoriously difficult, and I got demolished. I never won a single game of Terror from the Deep. It's a really hard game, and the games are notoriously difficult for like adults to play, right? It's a tough game. But it's such a good game. It's so incredible. And my understanding is that every subsequent release of the mainline games, including kind of the rebirth after 2K Games bought the license from Firaxis, especially XCOM 2, has been really outstanding. Now, I don't think like the non-strategy games are very good, and I think XCOM Apocalypse was supposed to be pretty bad, but for the most part, this is an outstanding franchise. Now, XCOM Enemy Unknown, from my understanding, is a remake of the original XCOM game from like 94, 93, something like that. And it's gotten really good reviews. Long War is a really huge mod that replaces a bunch of assets, not all of them, replaces a bunch of assets and essentially adds to the experience of the game. It adds, so the idea behind the game, for a lot of people who aren't familiar, is that, aliens are invading Earth and you are in charge of extraterrestrial combat, the name of an organization that is funded by an international consortium, essentially the UN, but basically UN member states, to combat the alien invasion. But they're very technologically advanced, but it's the beginning of the invasion, so they're only sending kind of small probes out and stuff like that. And so you have to do a bunch of research and figure out whether or not you want to deploy certain types of soldiers. Do I want to deploy a grenadier? Do I want to deploy a commander? Do I want to deploy a sniper? Do I want to deploy like an all-around soldier? What about an engineer? What about a demolitions expert? All kinds of classes of soldiers to these kind of unknown situations, so it's a management game, and then it also becomes a turn-based strategy game. And the turn-based strategy is really deep and complex. The management's really deep and complex. It's a really excellent merger of the two ideas, and you only have a certain amount of resources, and you have to manage, like, if you don't go to solve some problems in China, then you lose funding from China, even if you know that the mission you have to go to in China based off of your scouting is like impossible to execute. And so there's like a lot of political considerations and stuff like that. It's already a deeply complex game, but Long War is a mod that adds complexity, adds new technologies for research, adds new soldier classes and stuff like that, adds an entirely new dimension of gameplay. The base game is fun and good, but you don't need to play the base game to play the expansion or to play the mod, because it's not like an add-on that adds like new plot and new content. It's essentially an upgraded version of the game. It's like playing the game again. And I would say just if you're going to go into XCOM, which is already a really like it's diving into the deep end of the pool strategically. It doesn't really hold your hand. If you're going to do that anyway, just go into Long War. But yeah, outstanding question, because this is a great series of games.
My 4-year-old is planning to replace me, has a question for Arif's Anime Corner. I
won't be able to help.
I'm interested in watching old DBZ movies that I heard about as a kid, but never had an opportunity to see, like the original Broly fights. What website would you recommend to be able to watch them?
Okay, so first, I don't know if these are available at the typical repositories for this kind of stuff. I Googled around. I guess Crunchyroll, weird name, is the name of a streaming service that has this Japanese animation on it. And my understanding is that the movies are just completely separate from this show, which I understand to be fairly popular. Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, I guess they're separate shows. But the movies stand kind of outside of the continuity of those, although they will reference events in the show that are referenced to the movies, or items or lore are explained in the movies that end up becoming important to the show. So like there's something called like a sensu bean that you first encounter in one of these movies, stuff like that. That's my understanding, just like a quick Google search. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. But if they're not available on an official streaming platform like Crunchyroll, then I would feel really uncomfortable recommending a site that you'd be able to pirate from. I don't know if, for example, a website that I used to use, like Kiss Cartoon, is still available, but they only do Western animation. So this wouldn't be me instructing you to go to something like, I don't know, Kiss Anime or kissanime.com.ru and find what would almost certainly be an enormous repository of this kind of media. I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't check because
that would be irresponsible.
I don't watch anime, and pirating is illegal, and I wouldn't recommend that on a recorded line. So
irresponsible.
So that's the kind of website that you might be able to watch it at. I also know, and I don't know that much about pirating because it's illegal, and you wouldn't want to do that. But my understanding is that the wave, when it comes to pirating, what the kids are doing these days. Okay, if I'm being honest, kids don't know how to pirate anymore. It's a lost art. But my understanding is that the way that people pirate nowadays is they use something called torrent. They use something called torrenting. So I would probably, if I were a pirate, and I wouldn't recommend that you do this, of course. And if you did do this, I wouldn't recommend that you use a browser known for its privacy and open a VPN and search for a guide on how to torrent, or search up popular torrenting websites like the Pirate Bay and look at the official subreddits for places like the Pirate Bay to see which ones are safe torrenting websites to use, because there's a lot of clones of the Pirate Bay that are actually dangerous to use. But I wouldn't tell you to go and look for a guide on how to torrent, or to go to the Pirate Bay subreddit to find the Pirate Bay and figure out how to torrent. But that is another way that a lot of people engage in this gross illegal behavior that you shouldn't do.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just better to go up magnet fishing.
Yeah. God, that's good.
Let's go to Tankby, who asks, for the Norse Code Nostalgia Corner, remember when the weirdest questions you received were food questions mixed with the occasional CFL ones? How much do you miss those days? Do you acknowledge that despite that, nostalgia is poison and should be purged? We should all be purged.
Yeah, nostalgia is fascist. That's a good point, Tankby. Tankby, by the way, whose name is a play on the concept of a tanky, which is, I wouldn't call it a totalitarian communist, but certainly one that is comfortable with the concept of exercising centralized power. Tankby, I agree that nostalgia is fascist. Do I miss the old days? Always and all the time, and I'm always seeking ways to reproduce them in manners that harm my friends and family.
I've never heard Arif say a more true sentence in my entire life.
This reminds me of a debate story. No,
that's the only way that could go. That's the only. Only way that could go. I mean,
we got some weird questions in the past, but certainly they're not as weird as having like a corner, like a witchcraft corner and a sumo corner and all that. It's gotten more bizarre over time.
Deez asks, for Arif and James's relationship corners, as you are both seemingly in what you'd consider healthy relationships, have you made a secret pact that if you two are single at a certain age, you'll just date one another? If so, is one king-size bed enough, or is a bunk bed the way to go?
Okay, first of all, I don't know why the concept of a healthy relationship has made you in any way consider the concept that James and I would be in a relationship with each other. I can't imagine a more unhealthy relationship dynamic. Well, I know James can because he's lived it, but for me...
okay. I'm not...
Okay.
I don't know why I was catching a stray there.
Don't pretend that I'm not a better partner than some of your exes.
Well, I'm not, look, the bar is a tavern in Hades, so, like, I get it.
But yeah, like I don't know why. Like James and I would not be a healthy relationship. But
I famously don't like dating people taller than me. So
right, it's it's a challenge. I think
I don't like looking up. Like it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. So no secret or public pact along those lines. It wouldn't surprise me if like James and Dusty made a pact, but Dusty's pretty happy with what's going on in his life too. So I don't think any pact would be activated in that case either.
No, I can't be with somebody who ages. It doesn't work for me. So let's go to Kyle Segal, who asks, I was wondering, hi by the way, when one is hypothetically robbing a bank, is it best to ask for a low amount and hope the teller doesn't push the alarm button thingy, or presume they're going to do it anyway, so go big in the demands? Please hurry, I'm next in line, hypothetically. So we got this a couple hours ago.
Yeah. Also, hey, Kyle, it's been so long since you've submitted a question, man. Dude, the days when we would talk about how he doesn't have pants, that's so long ago. You're right, Tankby, nostalgia rules.
we are all slaves to Kyle Segal, and we should just accept it. I'm glad the hurricanes in Florida haven't dampened his spirits, as it were. Yeah, well, there were some close calls.
There were, genuinely.
legitimate close calls.
But robbing a bank, don't do it. But hypothetically, let's say you were writing a story or a screenplay for a movie. In that case, I would say just go big or go home. I don't think asking for a small amount is going to change the teller's behavior. You can't, this isn't like a metaphorical frog in boiling water moment. You can't gradually turn up the temperature or the amount that you ask for. Go all in, because in for a penny, in for a pound, in the most literal sense possible here. They're going to send the police after you. So do the most. In the story.
In this hypothetical situation.
Right. Yeah.
I have to ruin your life for a moment, and I don't like this.
So I was wondering why there was a name but not a question attached. So now I'm about to find out.
So last week, Damien submitted a question, and I flat out refused to touch it.
Correct.
There were words in that I was not going to answer. It was for an audience of less than one. I was not interested. And I'd mentioned it in the pre-show stuff, and I went, "This is the question from Damien. We're not answering this." So he sent this in. Despite my sincere and heartfelt attempts to share my love of cycling, and my genuine belief that Arif would appreciate the complexity and strategies involved around the sport known as, quote, chess on wheels.
Oh my God.
I have persistently seen my questions fall on deaf ears. As a result of this...
We answered it 2 shows ago.
As a result of this...
And then we got made fun of for answering it.
I have decided to try a hobby less niche and more acceptable for the pod hosts. I was inspired by the recent surge in posts about football cards on the Discord, and have recently purchased my very first card. My question is, should I continue to expand my collection, or will you agree to answer future cycling questions? I am sending you...
Am I just being held hostage? Am I supposed to... let me take a look at... Oh my God!
So he sent me this, and this disturbed me. They are what I can only describe as images that Drawplay Dave has done over the years for an Arif trading card. And there is no amount of eye bleach that exists for this. So he said, also, I've heard these things are worth more when autographed. So will Arif sign my card when I bring it to Dublin?
No. So I went from he's going to develop an addiction to essentially gambling by buying football cards. I don't like being put in this position where I have to either do something or fuel someone's addiction. But no, it wasn't like a threat to one's own well-being. This is extortion. This is blackmail.
It's not great. It's not great. It hurts.
Yeah, you're telling me, dude. What's the we don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't negotiate with terrorists.
That has been a long-standing policy of Norse Code and Norse Code LLC for a very long time.
Right. That's why I've never asked for a salary. No, I mean,
there's a lot to unpack here, and dude, no, I cannot.
We don't negotiate with terrorists, and so if we had acceded to this threat, this blackmail, this demand, it would encourage others to engage in blackmail, seeing that it works. And so I refuse to create this incentive.
If you'd like to see this awfulness, I'm about to post it to the Discord. Patreon.com/NorseCode. For $3.50 a month, you too can lose your eyes. And with that, that is going to be the end of this episode of Norse Code. We hope you have enjoyed it. Arif, other than eye bleach, what can we look forward to? I can't even form the words after I looked at it again. My words derailed.
Okay.
What do you have to plug?
You could look forward to my now hastened demise, I guess. No, I gotta stop looking at this. Okay. No, wide left off football. We got a bunch of pieces coming out. We've got a piece about how likely it is that people will be claimed off of waivers. I know that some people are kind of worried about that with like Elijah Williams of all people. And so I want to address those concerns. We've got a piece coming from Matt. I think he pronounces his name Freeze, while Will Fries pronounces his name Fries. I should ask him. But Matt Freeze at Freeze Football is going to be doing a film breakdown for us. It's going to be on Max Brosmer, and he's going to continue to do film breakdowns for us throughout the season, so that's going to be great. But he's got one coming up soon on Brosmer. I've also got a piece. I got like two more pieces at wide left. One's going to be about like Anthony Richardson and kind of the conversation about developing quarterbacks. We've got another piece about the Feldman's Freak List coming out. We've got all kinds of stuff for at wide left football that I'm really excited about. I've also updated the piece about how much preseason performance can tell us about rookie and second year quarterbacks. That has all of the PFF data that was originally used for the piece updated to include the most recent preseason games. And currently the most popular article at Wide Left is Why Isn't Kyle Pitts Good? People seem to really enjoy that piece. So check that out over at wideleft.football. If enough of you subscribe, I will not let Damian ruin my day.
Boy, that puts it all on the listeners, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, first him, then me. Okay,
that's fair. And with that, that's going to be the end of this episode. So for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will be back soon. But until then, and especially now, the horrors persist, and so do we. And we'll be back soon. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of... and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or at my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merch. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.